refugees come to this country with empty hands, but not empty heads. If you have a company, if you are hiring, if you are want to engage, just engage with this community. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are artists, there are people that have history. There are people who've gone through adversity, but also survived and that are here in the United States. And some of your grandparents have done the same thing. If you're not careful, like if you really pay attention, a lot of our people have gone through that process. And imagine if your grandfather or great grandfather was coming today, what would you do?
Okay, we are here today with Tariq. Thank you for taking some time to join me on the Gravity Podcast. It's really awesome to have a chance to get to know you a little bit. I've really enjoyed our conversations, and I want to take the time to really hear your full journey.
Well, Brett, thanks for having me, and I'm honored to be on this podcast. But not only that, but also being part of the community. I've always heard your name everywhere, and I'm like, we had our first few conversations. Always enjoyed being in your presence. So I was born in East Africa, Somalia, Mogadishu, the capital city. In some ways, I was privileged because I grew up in a diplomatic corps family, which we traveled quite a bit. My father was stationed in many countries abroad, such as Yemen, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Syria. So all the Middle East countries, I have my footprint in all those countries. In 1991, the country collapses because of civil war. Somalia collapsed. And, I remember as a kid, getting a phone call, my father answering the call. He was in Damascus at the time. We were in Damascus at the time, and we get a phone call that the country completely collapsed. From that moment, January of 1991, my life changed. I became a refugee. And what people don't understand is there's all these loose terms are thrown out, refugee, undocumented, asylum seeker, immigrant. All of that, yes, we all fall under that category, which is somebody who's leaving a country, going to another country to reside and live and work. A refugee, you are persecuted based on your ethnicity, your religion, your political affiliation, and so forth and so on. That is a Geneva Convention of 1951, designated after World War II, when we said never again. That is for the European refugees when the Second World War happened. Before that, there was no designated official human rights for a person to be protected. So when I say I became a refugee, that is what I'm talking about. I became under that category.
Now sorry. That's 1991. You're how old?
So I was born in 78. So
okay.
That, teen.
Yeah. Got it.
Early teen.
Yeah. So I want to dive into that with you.
Sure.
I'm fascinated to understand that. And what I'm kind of curious about, and what I want to go back to is like, who were you before that? Like, tell me more about like you as a kid, your parents, your family. I want to understand who you were, who your family was, like how you guys were living in the world. And then, we can talk about what changed at that time.
Yeah. So, just like the United States, there are economic, classes of individuals. There's the working class, middle class, and those who are, doing well in life, right? From a class point of view, we were sort of that upper middle class families who, private school, a protective detail because of the embassy, childhood was never broken. I had both parents at home. I had, summer vacations were sometimes in Europe, sometimes in other Middle Eastern countries. So life, my childhood, it is what an American, equivalent to an American middle class, upper middle class childhood of both parents being inside the house that is being supported in every aspect. Education also was very, very important to my parents, which, you name it, the tutor and, everything that I could possibly need. So from a childhood point of view, it's really not any different than a kid growing up in Bexley or New Albany or, Upper Arlington, right? So that is my childhood. So from that to a completely 180 degree of not having a country to go back to, or a sense of belonging into a flag or a nation state. Just imagine that, right? Mm-hmm. So that is what changed. But from a childhood point of view, just like any mischievous kid, stealing a car from, just trying to joyride with my own cars. I didn't steal other people's cars. You know what I mean? Like getting into trouble, basketball, you name it. It's just a normal, what you would call an American childhood.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was curious about, is what life was like, for you. And in the podcast I've often, we always start here, and I'm kind of curious to see like who the kid that came into the world was, and how that, continues to kind of show up as you move through your life. Mm-hmm. Right. So you said you were, mischievous, a lot of kids are, into basketball, but it sounds to me like it was a very, very like normal sort of life that you were living. Right.
Yeah. It was normal life, but I won't, I've got two boys and they're constantly, I keep telling them how I grew up. If they did the things that I did, they would absolutely be, in big trouble.
Yeah.
Like driving a car in a country that the laws are more relaxed, like at age 12. In the US, a kid drives a car at age 12. It is really, really bad situation, right? Yeah. I mean, that kid is not going to, his life will be altered because of, that. So you have that and us taking the car and driving. I remember hitting a pedestrian and I was like, my life is over. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was grounded. Mm-hmm. I was absolutely in trouble, but I didn't go to jail. Mm-hmm. I didn't face consequences, mm-hmm. right? So as a child, you want to impress your friends. So mischievous, number one, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Getting into basketball fights and every day, proving your point that mm-hmm. you're better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a exact teenage testosterone, mm-hmm. That you've gone through, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. So everything changes, really. Come 1991, you now become this designated refugee. And tell me about kind of, what happened and when, and like the days leading up to that, weeks or months or what, do you know this is coming? What are your parents sharing with you? How much do you know as a kid about what's going on here?
Well, we are seeing a mass. So what changed actually is the level of Somali migration. So when you are abroad in an embassy, you see a lot of students, a lot of professionals who come to that particular country to work. So let's say U.S. Embassy in Ghana, in Accra, for example, there'll be a lot of expats, U.S. expats, and what they need the embassy for is either guidance, safety, making sure that they know the laws of the country and they can get situated, right? So the embassy provides those kind of information and safety and what have you. So the embassy my father worked, the Somali embassy was providing that to a lot of Somali expats that are working in Syria or other countries in the Middle East and helping them navigate that. What changed, I remember clearly as a child, is the number of people arriving, fleeing the war. right? Of needing protection. That I've noticed as a child. I'm like, man, there's a lot more people than what I'm used to arriving, at the doorstep and asking for support. Second thing that changed is the uncertainty, even as a child, of the economic situation. So if the government that you're relying your salary on completely disappears, you are in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you are representing a flag and a country. If that country collapsed, what is your job? So as a child, I'm putting all these things together, and it's making me think, man, this is not going well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just growing up. I'm just enjoying life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you can think back and remember that was how you felt, like this is not good.
Absolutely not good.
Yeah.
And the news that's coming out of Somalia of the death and destruction and the buildings collapsing on people and artillery in the middle of the city.
Were you scared?
Terrified.
Terrified, yeah.
Terrified, right.
Yeah.
But even though I'm thousands of miles away from it, the feeling of people arriving like weekly, of either traveling to Ethiopia, to Djibouti or Yemen, and then coming all the way to Syria, it's such a massive scariness, right?
Yeah.
But so as a child, I've noticed that, but hindsight right now, it's a lot more scarier for my parents. What are they going to do? Where are they going to go?
Yeah, so what happens? Yeah. What happens next?
So, I mean, then you need to immigrate. You need to find your asylum, your next country of asylum. So it took years and years to get, to be able to come to the West. We had a chance to go to Europe. We had a chance to go other countries, but America is what we needed. My dad did not want to travel. That's another thing too, that breaks the family apart. And in any European conflict, any European will tell you how many people they left behind, right? Not more than anybody in the Jewish community. Now, if you're Jewish in Columbus, I'm pretty sure you have cousins and friends in Europe, Canada. Most people are like, wait, you have cousins everywhere. Yes, that is the history of fleeing wars, is you scatter everywhere. So we scattered. I've got cousins, and I've got, bunch of family members all over the world, Australia, Canada, Europe, London, everywhere. So
and these opportunities are coming up, and your parents are telling you, about them, but hey, we're not going to go there. We're going to wait. How much did you know? How much were they sharing?
Not a lot, because you want to protect.
Yeah.
You want to protect your child from, the uncertainties. You want to tell them what is definite going to happen. Right. So while you're grasping in everything, you don't want to share that. So I'm sure there's a lot of conversations I wasn't aware of. But what I was definitely aware of is the United States is the only option. A country that gives its immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees opportunities far greater than a lot of other countries. So we scattered. My mom, so I came. I've got 2 siblings. I've got siblings who became citizens then left, go elsewhere. But we all came in different times. And
so you came with who?
By myself. You
came by yourself?
Yeah, but at that time, it was like 5 years later. So I am in late teen-ish.
Who came first? Who was here?
Uncles and not like.
So when you got here, you had some family, but your immediate family was not here yet.
Not here yet. Yeah. So I did have an uncle. I've got like family friends and what have you that supported me when I first arrived, put my life together in some sense. Then a sister, a brother, slowly start trickling in. But some of them also, I have a sister that went to Europe, did not make it here. So father never came, passed away in 2006. So it's I don't recommend forced immigration. I recommend immigration if you're getting a job and economically doing well, but forced immigration is the most horrible thing you can imagine, that you don't know where you're going to end up in. So It's a terrible
I mean,
feeling.
it's yeah, I will never understand that. And, yet like just thinking about it, hearing you talk about it, it's terrible, to split families up, to not know where you're going, where other people are going, what your life is going to be like, what their life is like, to be away from your parents. It's got to be, traumatic.
Yeah, because I am at that age where my parents were, and I've got the kids, and I don't know how I would react. I'd probably buckle. Like, I'd probably be absolutely depressed if the U.S. breaks apart now and I have to flee again. Like, imagine, like, most people don't realize that is what refugees have gone through, right? So,
And if you don't mind me asking,
sure.
what happened with your dad? Why did he never get out?
I can speculate, right? And again, once we got our documents, we always often every summer went and visited him. So it was not like a family breakup at all. It is I feel like somebody who's had his mission, well respected, well in the peak of their career, coming to the US as a refugee, it deters a lot of male professionals. Like, Iraqi doctors will not immigrate here because they know they're not going to become the doctors they were in their community. So I feel like there's a pride to that, but also there was a hope that the country will be pieced together again and we can return to where he was. I absolutely adore and love the man. It is just that I probably would do the same thing.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
I've actually seen, in my own family, not really through blood, but there's been some Russian immigrants, and they like were doctors and well respected, and
Right.
weren't able to continue in the same life that they had. Now, there's a different life that gets offered here, and I suppose if you're really willing to and able to take what might be decades to rebuild your life, you could have a better life. But that's not an easy step by any means,
Right.
Especially if it means giving up, the thing that you can do, that you might like to do, that you're compensated for. Language barriers can be, a problem. I mean, there's it's starting over, and
Exactly.
and that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And that is, yeah.
And it's starting over in a strange
Yeah.
and a totally literally foreign world.
Right.
I mean, it's not something that, I think anyone could take.
You and I, if we moved to Romania today, even though we obviously know how to read and write, you've done successful businesses, I'm sure you'll survive, but it will not be the same as if you go to a country like Canada, for example. You're much closer culturally. You're much more adaptive to those. If you move to Kenya, for example, right now, since we were talking about Kenya earlier, you'll be having a tough time adjusting to the culture and everything. So I'm proving your point of how difficult it is as an adult professional to move to another country and start again.
Yeah.
Now, our kids can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm just, you're right. It's a good way to think about it. Okay, imagine moving to Romania. I mean, there's also a lot of prejudice,
Right.
where people in any country are likely to see somebody that's not from their country or doesn't have the language, the skin color, the religion, right? And they can get, ostracized or and there's a lot of reasons why that could just be, phenomenally hard.
It is. Yeah.
So what was it like for you? You get here, You have some family here.
Yeah. So I feel like the difference between America and a lot of other countries, it's a multicultural country. That's what this country is based on. Like if I go to Europe, for example, even if my grandkids are born in Europe, because of their skin color, they will not be European. But the United States has that difference, I feel like. If I don't have an accent, I am a Black American, but I will be what you would assume that I am a Black American, and that's the end of the story, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is so to me, I feel like that's what helps young people when they first arrive here as either immigrants or refugees, is the adaptability of, okay, I like this, I can take from this culture, I can take from this, I can take from this. I don't like this, I'm not going to do this. Versus universally, you have to adapt to this culture. So for me, it was adapting what is America. Okay, language. Okay, I need to, luckily I did speak some English and I could navigate, but learning about that, work ethics, what do Americans do, networking, all of those things, is easier for you to start vacuuming it up and really figuring it out.
And I kind of want to just like really understand, what that was like for you. Mm-hmm. Do you say to are you just paying attention, you're watching and you're thinking, okay, I'm getting it. I understand what I need to do here. And you're adapting to this culture, to the society. Is that what you're doing? And do you feel like you're losing yourself, or shifting or changing? What was that really like for you?
You should be a therapist. I like this. I have to rethink exactly how that works. I'm serious. Right? Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. So if you are a person that is born in a different country and different culture, different religion, the mainstream religion, you have to sort of have two voices. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that from the African American community, that you have to have two voices. The voice one is you, the way you would speak to your friends and the language that you speak and what have you. The other voice is, what sector of the American society am I either going to or going to be part of? So if you are going to be the professional sector of it, you need to understand the American way of number one, networking. What friends are. Because in some cultures, your friends are your boys, like the ones that with you. Mm-hmm. An American friendship is somewhat not the same as where I grew up. So you need to know what level of friends are these friends. Co-workers, acquaintances, people you shake hands with, belong to the same club, either photography or whatever club that you're in, right? Mm-hmm. So I need to adapt to understand that concept. And this is what the difference is. Many immigrants are not understanding what these two voices are. Voice one of who you are as a person, and Americans that you don't ask about political affiliation. Depends on level of friendship, for example, right? I don't want to know who you're going to vote for. Depends on. So those are the kind of intentional things. If you're asking me, how did I navigate that? Those are the things I had to learn of which way, what kind of friend is this?
Well, let me make sure I understand that. So you're saying that's specific to America, like the way you laid out friendship. Was it different for you at home?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. That is like absolutely an American thing. Like I have to do that. I'm doing that right now. And I've lived here my whole life, and my parents and my grandparents have lived here their whole lives. And I am right now redefining the word friend, right? And I'm at 49 years old learning that there's different categories of friends. And it's fascinating to hear you say that, because it's very current for me right now. Like, that's absolutely a thing here, and it's interesting that it's not elsewhere.
I didn't know you're a refugee, my friend. So welcome. No,
but no, the reason I bring that up is not to make this about me, but like I was wondering, is that a human thing? Is that something we all have to do? Like, no matter where we are in the world, where we have to kind of figure out as we go through life who our friends are, who they're not. You know, the idea of two voices, you know, is that a specific thing to your experience, to race, or is that like, right? Is that something that we all might have to do, where we're trying to figure out like who we really are? Do we have one voice? Do we say certain things in some rooms with certain friends and not in others? Or you know, is this part of just like a human experience and trying to figure it all out as we go through life? Or is that something specific in this country, or specific that you know refugees have to navigate in a different way?
Well, that is yes to many of the questions that you've asked. One is definitely it's an industrial Western, with variations of Europe being a little different, Canada being a little different. But for the most part, the relationship that you have with people, it is a genuine relationship. I'm not saying the relationship that you and I, for example, have is not genuine, but the level of I would do anything in my power for you with nothing in return, that is a uniquely different parts of the world, that kind of a friendship. The United States, and by the way, we have something also called the tribal, so blood lineage, right? So are you my fourth, fifth cousin? Some cultures would use that kind of a friendship based on familiar and bloodline. So if you are part of my tribe, my way, my last name or my lineage, then our relationship is also much tighter than a regular friend would be. So what are you asking is exactly, it's an American Western style of friendship is so different. And the two voices, Americans, and I used to be surprised when I would work in like, you know, entry level jobs, for example, people would be like, customer service will be talking differently. And once the customer leaves, everybody's like cracking jokes. And I used to wonder, like, wow, how do they switch that? And that is what led me to believe about the differences in American relationships. Because the Somali culture is you. In your religion, everybody knows what religion you are. Politically, everybody knows it. All your friends know everything about you. There's nothing hidden. But in America, at workplace, as certain friends, Brad, you can't say, nobody should know your political affiliation. Nobody should know your salary. No, like those kind of a compartmentalized way of looking at things, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's interesting. I could probably, continue to go deep on that with you, because it does feel like we were talking a little bit about, my experience last summer in Africa, and, what I loved about it, was this simplicity. And it does feel like, what you're describing, as American culture, it's a problem in our culture too, right? That there's so much sort of complexity or stickiness, or I don't know, worry about things that shouldn't really matter, your political affiliation or your compensation or whatever. But in any event, tell me more about kind of how you did acclimate, and now that you're learning this culture, you're seeing the culture, and how did you decide to kind of engage with it, and how does your life unfold, here in this country?
Yeah, I mean, professionally, so adjustment period, we talked about it, of knowing how to read a room, how to understand, American kind of like the humor side of things. And I used to always wonder, actually, and many refugees still wonder, why Ohioans talk about weather all the time. That I didn't understand, right? Because we come from a country where climate doesn't really fluctuate. It's always hot. It's either raining or not raining. That's end of the story. But here in Ohio, I used to wonder, man, hot day today, huh? Oh, cool day. That's the first conversation. They say hi to each other. And I used to wonder, what is up with these people? So that's another adjustment that I needed to.
By the way, I think like maybe I'm not meant to be from here either, because I'm always like, why are we always talking about the weather?
Right.
I don't get it either.
I think you're a refugee. I think I need to dig deeper in you. I think you were born in Somalia somewhere.
I was born in Miami, Florida, which is also a very multicultural
That's
city.
why. So I had to learn what I just described to you about, how to like really engage in a small talk, a conversation, which still I have a hard time with, because it doesn't come from a genuine place sometimes. And you have to like kind of feel the air in a room. I had to watch a lot of satire, like shows, in order for me to be part of a conversation. Like I remember watching Seinfeld, and I remember not understanding half of, he stole a bread from a lady and he ran away and said challah bread. Now I do know what that is, but I didn't know why is he stealing a bread? What's so important about this bread? So all these shows and all this water cooler conversation I needed to understand. So I needed to be engaged with that. So those, luckily, I had to adapt quickly and really figure out what Americans talk about in order for me to be engaged in a conversation. And that was intentional.
It is fascinating how much the culture, including like television and film, informs what people think. I mean, I had somebody yesterday who's in marketing attempt to explain to me that there's this theory that because there was the television show 24 had a black president, that Obama would have never been able to be elected as president if it weren't for that television show. And the theory was that it allowed for Americans to see and have some context for what it would look like to have a leader. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Like the show 24, like did people even watch it? But I do think that it's funny how
influences, right?
Yeah. That the people are turning to this content now more than ever, for their like context on things, right? For better or worse, probably for worse.
Well, I can go on a rabbit hole about the Apprentice and how that also led, about our 45th president. But
ironically too, right? Because like
nobody knew. Like
reality television show was like a joke too at the time. I mean, still whatever it is, what it is. But absolutely.
No, I agree with you. About the black president. Maybe there's a theory that we can dispute that, but television influencing how we think and what we eat and what we wear, there's no doubt about it. Like there is that element of commercialization. So,
well, by the way, that's not my theory, but I am sort of just curious. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I somewhat agree, because it really, so Hollywood's language, right? What movies, the accent that the movies and television shows have, it's a Midwestern sort of an accent. It's not a Southern accent. It is not a country accent. It is a Walter Cronkite sort of that middle America accent. Why? So why do Americans, everywhere they are, they have the same accent? It's because of television, right? With exceptions of Southern slangs and what have you. But for the most part, most Americans, airports, anywhere you meet them, they will have similar accent to Ohioans. One word or two might be a little different, but for the most part, we all have it. That's exactly what television does. And this is why I made sure that I sort of understood that American way of speech pattern, deliverance of a point, somewhat not being constant disagreement. Because in some cultures, in my culture, you have to disagree. You have to be able to say your point and nobody takes it personal. But in America, you have to like sort of wobble, especially in a professional setting. You have to say, well, I see your point. But did you think about it this way, right? In my culture, you don't say those things. You say, no, you're full of crap, man.
Yeah, right.
Get out of here with that noise.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something really nice about that, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
I prefer the American way. Believe me.
No. I think there's something nice about being able to just say you're full of crap.
No.
Yes, because
you're a lot tougher than I am.
No, I just think like let's just be real with each other and get around all the bullshit of tiptoeing around. How do you like, right? I mean, say you're full of crap and tell me why I'm wrong.
I think you and I are from this. Well, we are from the same generation. I feel like there's a generation that cannot handle that. Right, and that is the gap of generation. If you're a World War II generation, you'll definitely say what's on your mind. Our generation would say, we can go back and forth. Yeah. But there's a generation, Brad, that you cannot say you're full of crap, buddy.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I definitely am very sensitive to, you know, what I say and how it might land with people because I care and I don't want to hurt somebody. So you do adapt. I just think like maybe there's like some in between, you know, where we could be a little more straight with one another. And I'm also kind of like, I don't know why this keeps coming up for me, but I went to this country festival last weekend. I went because there's an artist that was the second to lead, his guy Billy Strings, who I think is phenomenal. I love this guy. He's a bluegrass, like lifelong born groomed bluegrass guitar player, and he's incredible. But the lead act was somebody I had never heard of, but he filled a stadium for 2 days in a row. Zach Bryan, who was good. It's just like not really my thing. But in any event, and it was like enjoyable, but like that group of people, when you talk about, you know, America being multicultural and Walter Cronkite, like, I don't know, actually, you know, and maybe the reason Donald Trump was elected, might be elected again, is because the people that were in that stadium who definitely like broke out in USA chants and F Biden chants, like that is actually this country. And again, I'm not like, I don't have a big enough audience to worry about losing listeners.
I'm not either.
And I'm not even saying right or wrong. I'm just trying to ask the question, like, who does this? What is the population of this country?
I hope you're wrong, because I know you and I are in a bubble of the people that are like-minded, and I shouldn't assume what you are, but for me at least, I am a sort of the blue sort of respect immigrants and let's welcome people and what have you. Yes, I do pay attention. There is a society that, or some people of our country that really doesn't believe in what you and I believe in. I think the middle is the largest. The people are not going to chant those crazy things, disrespect the president. And those who are saying that, you know, the opposite of those people are not the people that are leading, or the people are going to come out in droves, hopefully, and vote.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
But it's scary, isn't it?
It is scary because I don't agree with you, and I wish you were right. I hope you're right. I think we need to make the middle the largest, but right now it feels like the middle is pretty narrow, and it's, you know, pretty extreme on both sides.
It is extreme, and it's hard to listen to. The left has, in my opinion, better policies. Policy of respect, policy of respecting the earth, but also some of the things that we need to also implement is growth and opportunities. Once we start shutting down some of these, like all of before regulations, right? There's some things that I noticed recently as I get older and I start looking at things. We cannot be Europe. As much as I love the European way of life and the transportation system and the healthcare and everything else, there's certain things we need to pull back or give opportunities. Things should not take forever to apply for. whether it's a permit, whether it's like things take forever and ever.
That's terrible.
That is what I'm talking about. Those are the kind of things I want us to like pull back a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard, you know, it's complex, you know, sometimes it feels like it shouldn't be as hard as it is. It seems like some things, you know, are pretty obvious, and it is frustrating when, you know, what I think is obvious is like so not obvious to somebody else. I mean, even things like, you know, the gun control piece, it's like, isn't that kind of obvious? But somebody else thinks it's like obviously wrong. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of complexity to this. And what I want to, just in the interest of time, you know, kind of come back to, and because I'm pretty sure we're probably aligned on, you know, most of what you and I think is obvious, is how you did end up, you know, really creating a life for yourself here. I get, you know, this, and it's incredible to hear. And I love the idea of culture, you know, and learning from things like television and right. But like, you're a real student, you're studying a culture, you're adapting, you're learning, you're integrating it. And so then what now that, you know, you start to like find your way here, you get it. What do you do with it? How did your life unfold here?
Well, after figuring out all of the things that you and I have discussed, I focused on, well, if I am going through this, many other refugees are going through the same thing. What can I do as a career? And lo and behold, like there was a small agency that was hiring at the time. Well, the agency is not small, but the department that was hiring at the time was a department that helped refugees sort of start their business and teach them how to build a business in the United States. So Somalis are entrepreneurial. Like if you go to East Africa, Somalis are running like multi-million-dollar in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda. So Somalis have that entrepreneurial spirit. But when you come to the United States, there's rules and regulations on how you start a business and what corporations you need to do, and, you know, all this paperwork that you need to do. And also, how do you raise capital is different. The way you go to your cousins and you're like, hey man, let's pull things together. That doesn't work in the United States, right? You need a larger capital. So at the time, there was a business and asset development within the larger organization called Jewish Family Services that was serving all of the, you know, it's a nonprofit that supports the community at large, not only specific community, right? That's a misconception of a lot of people. So I started there, and that was 2002. And Brad, I'm still there. I'm still helping. Not with that, I'm helping with other ways for the refugee community, but I am still helping the refugees not only find an economic foothold in the United States, but there's a piece that I still do, which is integration. It's how can a refugee who came talk to Brad and really learn from Brad? How can that leap go from zero as close as possible and as many years less? They say it takes 7 years for a refugee to dine in with an American-born person. Imagine how separate we are. We're neighbors, but we don't talk to each other, right? So I'm trying to close that gap in for the community to engage, people who are like-minded to come in and support this community that just arrived from a war-torn country. Is how are you part of our community? So
it's really great. I mean, this is like the thing that I keep coming back to, and I'm not exactly sure how it will inform, you know, what I do in the future, but I'm continually fascinated with how our lives inform our lives, right? So like, you know, you having your experience and now being in a position to assist other people in that same experience and make it better, right? You're using your life in service of other people. I believe that's why we are all here. And ultimately to figure out, you know, whatever happened, how did that become information that should be used to serve others. And you probably know from being around Jewish family services long enough, like what Jewish people would call that is a mitzvah,
Yes.
right?
I know the word very well.
Yeah, right. So that's it's a mitzvah to be able to help somebody else shorten that gap is a really beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And it's needed. I mean, and there's not enough of you, I know.
Well, absolutely. We need it. One thing I want to also tell you and share with folks watching, refugees come to this country with empty hands, but not empty heads.
Mm.
If you have a company, if you are hiring, if you are want to engage, just engage with this community. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are artists, there are people that have history. There are people who've gone through adversity, but also survived and that are here in the United States. And some of your grandparents have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, like if you really pay attention, a lot of our people have gone through that process. And imagine if your grandfather or great grandfather was coming today, what would you do?
Yeah. It's good. It's a good reminder and a good challenge. And I want to also make sure you spend a little time talking about how you're also shedding light on that through a creative lens. We didn't really talk much about, how you're creatively expressing yourself, but in a way that's also of service. Matt Scantlin's the one that introduced us initially. I know you've done some incredible photography for And Health, and you're doing film documentary work. Talk a little bit about that creative part of you and how you are using that.
So 2 things that helped me figure what I wanted to do creatively is a friend of mine named Abdi Roble, who is a documentary photographer, Somali, early on really wanted. So I picked up a camera just for the sake of picking up a camera. I don't have any art background. I never, done anything with photography at all. The idea was for me to photograph things around me, right? Just flower, things like that, just like everybody picks up a hobby. Soon enough, 2 things have happened. I met Abdi Roble, who's a photographer, documentary, amazing photographer, and me working for a Jewish agency. Every day I walk in a hallway that is a Holocaust memorial. Those pictures that I see every day, what it means to make sure archive and history doesn't disappear is something I realized the power of art and photography. Mm-hmm. So with the 2 things, meeting my dear friend and also working there, those 2 things with clarity, I knew what I wanted to do, is to tell refugee stories through a creative lens and make sure the stories are not slanted, not for political reason, but I want to archive your story, because 100 years from now, what did the Somali community look like when they arrived? What did they eat? What would their culture look like? Because America is the graveyard of cultures and languages. Mm-hmm. Every community that came here, Italians, Irish, Jewish, how many people speak Yiddish today? Yeah. That's exactly my point. 100 years ago, New York, everybody was, most people speaking Yiddish fluently, right? Mm-hmm. Today, schlep, a couple of words here and there, that's it, right? So that is what's going to happen to the people that my age who came 200 years from now, 100 years from now, the whole thing will change, because that's what America does. It absorbs every culture to makes it American way, right? So I want to make sure I archive that. And this is why I still shoot with old technology, like film, black and white film, for archivability reasons. I use cameras that are not existent anymore. That is, I'm piecing it together because I want to make sure that negative survives another 250 years to 300 years.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
So I hope that made sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of in awe of all of it, and I could talk to you for hours,
I
and
appreciate
I'm
you.
not going to do that today for a few reasons. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge you. You know, I think it's underappreciated. People are walking around, you know, all day with no understanding of what it's like to, you know, be a refugee and to come to this country and to come to Columbus, Ohio, and to have to adapt and to start over. And I mean, it's, you know, we all, myself included, we have our problems. We get kind of caught in our own heads and our own situations. And it's easy to lose the perspective of just how hard it is for other people. And you're clearly somebody who has overcome a lot of that, maybe all of it, to go on and to do really wonderful things in this community and beyond. And I see the passion, I see the deep desire, the care to make it better for other people. And yeah, I just really wanted, you know, acknowledge that and honor you and just, you know, thank you for what you're doing and for who you are and what you've overcome. And, you know, when I hear you talk about your dad and your family and, you know, just all of that, the trauma and the challenge and the, you know, I don't know, the mixed emotions, the sadness, you know, that's got to all be there too. I'm not a therapist.
I think you are.
Maybe I should have been. I probably would have liked to. Maybe I still will. But I do really just have compassion for just, you know, how hard all of that was and maybe still is to some degree. So yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you for having me, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing the story. And yeah, more to come.
We'll talk soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tariq. Yeah.